Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda. Welcome to our channel. Thank you so much for being a viewer and a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber yet, please consider clicking the subscribe button. Please click like, please enable notifications because my goal is to bring you the latest news when it comes to the country, the economy, and your money. And you'll see once you subscribe to our channel why our community is growing so rapidly and how valuable and how honest and truthful this information is. Let's jump right in. In this video, we are going to take a graphical look at the entire $1.9 trillion stimulus package that was signed into law by the president. Checks are going to start to go out in a matter of days, and you could see a $1,400 deposit in your bank account, perhaps more if you have dependents, and hopefully that can happen very quickly. In this video, we are going to take a look at a graphical representation, a breakdown, if you will, of the entire $1.9 trillion stimulus package and what could potentially be a major tactical mistake from the Republican Party. In fact, we're about to hear from Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who said that this was a big tactical mistake for the Republicans, which is why some of them are already starting to take credit for some parts of the bill while criticizing other parts of the bill, which, by the way, is quite interesting. And she also said the Republicans are basically going to have to talk to their constituents and explain to them why they voted no for a bill that puts checks in the mail for the American people. Let's roll the tape and hear from Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal.
So it didn't have Republican support, though at least one GOP senator is now taking credit for some of the bill's potential impact. What does that tell you? I mean, are you skeptical about the prospects for bipartisanship down the road? If something this big and seemingly popular at this stage, if you look at the polls, couldn't bring Republicans on board?
It's a very big tactical mistake for Republicans, and that's why I think you see some of the Republicans trying to claim credit for some of the things that are in this bill, because they're going to have to go home to their constituents. And this bill has 76% approval across the country. And they're going to have to try to explain why they voted no on a package that puts money in people's pockets and that helps people survive this terrible set of crises that we're in right now. So I think, they're going to have to make a decision if they are going to continue to obstruct us every step of the way, or if they're going to roll up their sleeves and be part of the solution. But we're not going to slow down what we do. We're not going to make what we do less, because the crises are too important. And I think President Biden understands that. That's why he came out with $1.9 trillion. That's why he stuck to that. That's why we progressives pushed so hard to make the bill as progressive as it is. And we are really committed to delivering for the people.
So that was Congresswoman Jayapal. That was a politician. Now let's hear from an economist. Let's hear from somebody who manages money, who doesn't have a political affiliation. Let's hear from JP Morgan Chase Bank's Chair of Global Research, Joyce Chang. And in this segment, let's hear Chang talk about that all the growth that is actually expected in the stock market. She actually said that all the growth that's about to happen has not yet been priced into the stock market. She's basically saying that the economic growth will continue and we are likely to see a further expansion of the economy, perhaps the greatest expansion we've ever seen, and a continuing increase in asset prices, including the value of stocks. Let's roll the tape and hear what Chang had to say.
We want to go to our next guest here, who predicts the relief package will contribute to the best economic growth in 5 decades. Joyce Chang is the chair of global research at JP Morgan. Joyce, great to speak with you.
Great to be here.
So the best growth in 5 decades, but has that been priced in with the markets sitting pretty much at record highs?
I don't think it's been priced in. I mean, we're looking at 9.5% growth for the second quarter of the year and north of 8% growth in the third quarter of the year. And we've also taken our forecasts higher on commodity prices as well. So I don't think it's fully priced in. I mean, this fiscal package is a victory for Biden. It happened a bit sooner than expected, and he really didn't have to make that many concessions. And when we look at actually what this means for earnings, it means that the multiples you can be sustained here. When we run the numbers over here, we think that about every $1 trillion of stimulus adds about $4 to $5 to EPS. So I don't think that this is fully priced yet. We're very comfortable staying with 4,400 on the S&P 500 target.
And folks, things get even more interesting in the next segment, where she said the economic outlook for the third quarter and the fourth quarter is actually going to increase and has not been factored in to the stock market because people are now going to start spending their $1,400 stimulus checks. I know some of our viewers and subscribers are going to spend the money immediately on food, on rent, on keeping the lights on other things like car payments. But some of our fellow Americans will save this and spend the money down the road, which is going to lead to a major boost in the economy in the third quarter and fourth quarter of 2021. These $1,400 stimulus checks are likely to have a delayed impact on the US economic recovery, unlike the first two stimulus checks. Let's roll the tape and hear what Chang had to say.
Remember that, in other parts of the world, we're not seeing the momentum that we are seeing in the US. It's US exceptionalism. So we still have the demand for treasuries, we have the deposit growth and the demand for treasuries that's still very much in place. So, there could be moments when this is disorderly, and market structure, liquidity, what we saw, last week, there could be repeats of that, but we think that overall, this is something that can be managed, and that the Fed, has given the forward guidance very consistently on this and has changed the framework.
Further on that point, though, Joyce, it's one thing to have the bond markets digest $1.9 trillion in stimulus, but you also think that an infrastructure bill could pass as well. So you add that spending to the mix, and could we actually see the bond market start going, higher than you think? It doesn't take the Fed to move the markets, obviously.
Well, I think infrastructure will be coming later in the year. It will also have to happen through budget reconciliation. So we're looking at a much smaller number, maybe something in the order of $300 billion, well below the Build Back Better, $2 trillion number that's been put out there. And I think some of that will get priced in as well. But, the key point that we would make is that, this will be, a second and third quarter story. We do still see that, by the fourth quarter of the year that you have growth coming down more to a quarterly rate that's around 3%. But it's these middle quarters when you have $1,400 of checks being sent, where some of the retail money is probably going to come back into the market. A little bit of a repeat of what we saw in December when you had the last checks sent.
I always love hearing from economists, but when I hear lawmakers and when I hear former White House economic advisors who now have their own show on a news network, I just smile. I'm about to show you a segment featuring Larry Kudlow, who now has his own show on Fox Business, speaking with the Republican senator from the great state of Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey. And Pat Toomey basically says, he asks whose money is this? And he says, hey, we're going to have to pay for this in the future. And he calls this a $2 trillion monstrosity. And he said this is as bad as Obamacare. And he calls this a socialist approach towards money. Wow, some pretty incredible comments as we shift gears from an economist. Now we're going to shift gears towards a lawmaker talking about socialism, talking about inflation, and talking about a monstrosity as bad as Obamacare. Pretty interesting words. Let's roll the tape and hear from Senator Pat Toomey, the Republican from Pennsylvania.
So what are they going to do? They're going to launch new spending programs. They're going to expand eligibility for existing programs. And they'll spend it all. And a year from now, Larry, they're going to say, oh my, we're out of money. You have to send us another $350 billion to continue these programs that you made us launch. That's what this is about. Dramatic expansion in the size of state and local governments that the federal government will control. It's terrible, Larry.
I think you're spot on, but I naively ask you, Senator Toomey, is this constitutional? Can they really do this?
Well, so that's a fair question. My worry is that, and I haven't, had a chance to have a legal analysis of the actual language, but what they can probably do is condition the money on the states agreeing not to cut their taxes. So maybe there's a way a state can walk away, but then they have to walk away from a big pile of cash. That's the way the federal government usually imposes its will on states.
I just see this to some extent. You and I have talked about this down through the years. This is kind of a philosophical question between the two parties here in 2021. So the Democrats, it's okay to spend your money. It's okay. Spend it, control it, regulate it, and so forth. But it's not okay for you to keep more of what you earn. You can't keep your money. They have to have your money. Now, that is a philosophical point that we should, I think, Pat, reiterate again and again during the by-election next year.
You're absolutely right, because the underlying premise, the fundamental divide is, whose money is it in the first place? Does it belong to the person who earned it, or does it really belong to the government? And you get to keep whatever the government generously decides to allow you to have of really its money. Who has that first claim on earned money? I think it's the person who earned it.
I've never seen such a blatant thing as this Schumer amendment. I never did.
Neither have I. Larry, I haven't seen anything like this bill. I think this $2 trillion monstrosity is every bit as bad as Obamacare, and that's saying a lot.
And I think you mentioned this, but it really is at bottom a major expansion of the welfare state. I call it
Absolutely.
LBJ Great Society to the 100th power.
Yeah, I mean, expanding Obamacare subsidies to people who make six-figure incomes. I mean, honestly, even the direct payments of several $1,000s to a family that makes $150,000 a year and never had an interruption of income. They don't need that payment. I mean, the list goes on and on. This is all about expanding the control and the role of government.
Yeah, it really is. Central planning. It's a socialist approach. I hate to say it, but it's a socialist approach.
Yeah, that just happened. Now let's shift gears and look at data. Here's a tweet on your screen from Alyssa Flowers, who's a graphics reporter at the Washington Post. Just some incredible work that some of these reporters do. And I'll read out Alyssa's tweet and provide you with a link to her tweet in the description section below. Just published a graphic look at the state of the stimulus bill, how it compares to the past pandemic and where the money is going. So here's the article from the Washington Post on your screen. How big is the Biden bill that was signed into law by the president, and who gets the most help? Let's take a look at the first graphic, the estimated deficit impact of the major stimulus bills over 10 years. Yep, over 10 years. On the left side of your screen, you'll see the latest stimulus, the American Rescue Plan that was just signed into law. You'll see the aid to state and local governments was $510 billion. The aid to individuals was $960 billion, which includes stimulus checks, unemployment benefits, health insurance provisions, including the federal government paying for health insurance premiums for middle-income Americans, nutrition, housing, and childcare, and refundable tax credits. Now, on the right side, let's take a look at the March 2020 and the December 2020 stimulus that were passed last year under former President Trump and under a Republican-led Senate. The aid to individuals in both those bills was just over $1 trillion. That included the stimulus checks and the unemployment benefits. But the aid to state and local governments was almost half of what the aid is in this bill. This bill has $510 billion in total aid, and the last two bills had $275 billion in total aid for state and local governments. Now, I just want to be clear to our viewers and subscribers, we're talking about deficit impact over here. We're talking about the impact over the next 10 years because a lot of this money is going to be staggered into the system over the next 10 years. That's why the deficit impact is significantly larger than what you might expect, because we're going to take into consideration the weakening of the dollar, the inflation component. So therefore, the deficit impact, even though the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan sets aside $360 billion for state and local aid, the deficit impact, because this money will be spread out over 10 years, is actually going to be $510 billion, because at some point this money is going to have to be paid back. And with inflation, the purchasing power of the dollar reduces. Here's a next image which shows you the change in after-tax income under the American Rescue Plan. Let's take a look at the left side, and you'll see that individuals with households making less than $25,000 a year, considered the lowest quintile, are going to see a 20% increase in average of their income with the stimulus checks and with the refundable tax credits. Pretty incredible. Those in the highest quintile making more than $164,000, at least $164,000 in annual income, are going to see a 1% increase in their net wealth. So for those who think that this is not targeted, take a look at this chart on your screen and ask yourself, is this not targeted? Because those who need help the most are indeed getting it. This is by no means a perfect bill. You've heard me say this before on our channel. Perfect bills exist in a special magical place called La La Land. But since we live in reality, and you take a look at this chart, you'll know that this bill is as targeted as we could do in a short span of time, in less than 7 weeks since President Biden was inaugurated. This is a pretty incredible achievement. Now, this is where things get even more interesting. A lot of people are like, oh my God, this is going to increase the deficit. According to new reporting from the Congressional Budget Office, and this is an incredible chart, again, courtesy of the Washington Post, you'll see this chart on your screen, how the Biden stimulus plan would affect the deficit. The bottom line is this would increase the deficit and make us borrow a lot of money, and the deficit impact would be significant this year and next year, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. But the deficit will go back to what it was prior to the pandemic in the following years leading up to 2026. Now, keep in mind, it's still high, but it's not expected to remain high as the US government tries to keep up with the deficit. I'll do another video talking about how we can come up with all the income to be able to keep up with all this spending. But in this video, I'm going to try and focus on the impact of the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. And just to give you a sense of how massive these bills are, these three stimulus bills, the two last year and one this year, are significantly bigger than all earlier interventions. The total federal spending per capita on stimulus during each era adjusted for inflation. You can start to see that the New Deal, which was passed back in the 1930s, provided just over $5,000 in stimulus per capita. The Great Recession, there was just over $5,000, quite similar to what happened almost 100 years ago. But in 2020, the amount of spending is close to $15,000 per capita. In simple words, this is easily twice the amount of stimulus we've ever done in any previous period in the history of America. So let's take a look at an actual in the trenches situation, ground reality. A family of four in Massachusetts, in which one parent would lose a job, would get around $6,000 from the government, including $15,500 in assistance that would have been available even without the stimulus. Pretty incredible. Let's take a look at this chart here that shows you previously available assistance on the left side. The pink area corresponds to unemployment insurance. In March 2020, you can see there was a substantial increase in unemployment insurance, and the stimulus payments appeared in March of 2020. Now let's fast forward to this month, March 2021. You'll see unemployment insurance is significantly expanded. The child tax credit, which was very minor in the past, has been significantly expanded. And stimulus payments of $1,400 are larger than the first stimulus check of $1,200 and more than twice the second stimulus check of $600. A single unemployed person in the state of Tennessee would get around $44,000 with all three stimulus plans, with all three bills, including $6,200 that would have been available even without the stimulus. As we take a close look at this, you'll start to see the significant amount of support from the federal government when we combine the Republican stimulus bills, both the stimulus bills last year, and this major American Rescue Plan from the Democrats. So what's the bottom line with all this? Here's an article on your screen from NPR. Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus plan is set to turbocharge the US economy. And finally, health insurance costs are set to drop from millions of our fellow Americans as a direct result of little known provisions in the American Rescue Plan. You'll see this headline on your screen from CNBC. Health insurance costs for millions set to drop under this massive stimulus plan that has been signed into law by the president. So the American Rescue Plan removes the income cap for 2 years for health insurance premium credits available through the Affordable Care Act. Now remember, in the past, you could get subsidies from the federal government, meaning the federal government chipping in to pay for part of your premium if you were below a certain income level. So what the American Rescue Plan did is remove the income cap for a period of 2 years for health insurance premium tax credits through the Federal Health Exchange. In other words, if you're making $150,000, $160,000 a year, you could still get support from the federal government to pay for part of your health insurance premium. And so basically you'll pay up to 8.5% of your annual income. So let's say your annual income is $150,000 and 8.5%, just to round things off, is, let's just say it's $12,000. I'm just doing this on the fly here. That would be $1,000 a month in insurance premium credits. But if you wanted to get insurance for yourself and your whole family, you would pay in this situation no more than $1,000 a month, which would be 8.5% of your income. If you made $150,000 a year, you would pay no more than 8.5% of your income towards the premium, and the remainder of the premium would be paid for by the federal government for the next 2 years. The Democrats are creating, I guess, what could be considered more reliance on the Affordable Care Act, more reliance on Obamacare. But one thing is for sure, many more people are going to be able to afford health insurance. And again, the amount you pay would be limited to 8.5% of your income as measured by the Affordable Care Act, because they'll ask you for your income levels. They will be able to do income verification by checking with the IRS. And anyone who received too much in tax credits in 2020 will not have to pay back the excess. So basically, more people can sign up for Obamacare and there'll be more help from the federal government. So that was it, everyone. A detailed graphic look at how the massive $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan will turbocharge the US economy, how it will make healthcare more affordable for millions of our fellow Americans. The tactical mistake, if you will, from the Republicans, and some very interesting comments from economists as well as lawmakers like Pat Toomey, as well as the one and only Larry Kudlow. There he is. What's up, Larry? The former White House senior economic advisor. I think he's having a good time on Fox Business. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. That would mean a lot to me personally. As you know, I can make it rain money. Check that out. That's my specialty. I can make it rain money, and I want to try and make it rain money for you. I will help you how to make money, how to save money, and how to invest money. Thank you so much. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.